Yeah, being my first year here, there were a couple of things. One, I thought they were good students. They were interested, but I could only tell the interest really when I was done with a lecture, and then they would all run up with questions, right? And there was lots of discussion during the breaks, but during the workshop, when I would ask them to interrupt me when they had the question, or if I would ask for a Q&A session, then it was very silent. So nobody would ask questions in front of each other. So I found that to be the biggest difference, was that the curiosity, in public curiosity, was quite a bit different than the West. So it was a different, it's just a cultural distinction, I think, of maybe public shyness, but also the to seem like you're asking a poor question in front of your friends, which nobody likes to do anywhere, right? Even in the West. But the students I found tend to be a little bit more aggressive about acquiring the knowledge. And that was probably the largest difference. And so it still takes effort to, get the questions to come. But once they start, it goes quite well. I think that the biggest difference was that curiosity. I know that the curiosity is still present in the Taiwanese students as much as it is in the West, but it's the way to express it that is maybe not as obvious here. I think that there's a bit more structure in the educational system in Asia in general than there is in the West. The West is sort of everyone's taught to be an individual, and they're all taught to question authority. So when they're in a classroom situation, they make it a lot harder on the teacher because they always ask why all the time. And through asking why, they might force the teacher to explain it better if they weren't understanding it, or to validate with more research the answer. And so I think that students can push a teacher as much as a teacher can push the students. So I think when you're in an open, collaborative environment or a questioning environment, not disrespectful questioning, just inquisitive questioning, like wanting more knowledge, wanting with more curiosity. And as soon as something is explained by an instructor, then there's followed by another question. Well, why is it like that? Oh, it's like this. Yeah, but why? And then doesn't that change this? And so it kind of, I don't want to say snowballs, maybe a word that doesn't translate, but the circle builds, right? The cycle of questioning and answer, question, answer, question, answer. And a lot of those questions lead to demonstrations. And the demonstrations lead to introducing new ideas. And without that cycle, you leave it entirely up to the instructor to lead the lecture or to lead the communication of the subject. But when it's questioned, the students start to drive the direction. And usually it becomes a much richer educational experience. I wish I knew. Because devoting myself so much to education is, it can be difficult because it's not a regular day job. It can be if I teach in one school, but I tend to be too entrepreneurial to want to teach in one school. And I've done that for 15 years, but when I see that the cost of education goes up so much in Western schools, that I think there's a large percentage of people that will never be exposed to this design thinking. And I think the design thinking is critical, not only to making our planet a better place, but just general problem solving. Design thinking can be applied to just living your own life daily. And so I really believe in the subject, and I want more people to experience that way of thinking about problem solving, and how they can apply that different methods of thinking, changing their point of view, changing their perspective, approaching a problem from a different mindset, can be very powerful. And so I think that's the thing I enjoy the most, is trying to find mediums, ways to share that experience, as opposed to only doing it in one school where I would get a better steady paycheck. I'd rather go do workshops around the world where I don't make any money, but it's a lot more interesting, if that makes sense. I think a couple of things. I think that the best students tend to be, they start with curiosity, and they want to know how the world works. They want to reinvent the world. So they start with curiosity, but then they're so curious that they start to investigate. And as they start to investigate the problem with passion, they start to want to create solutions. And so it's this idea of curiosity with passion for invention and creation and creativity. You put that with the curiosity, and then they start to formulate ideas. And so I think for some students, the challenge is there that if they don't start from a position of having an investigative mind, that can be difficult to foster. So that curiosity can be hard to stimulate in a student. Most students that are interested in art and design already start from that position. That's kind of why they like art and design. It's because they're already curious, and they have a passion for their skill set and their activity. Once they're learning skills and new methods and new ways of thinking, I think patience becomes a problem, because if you have a lot of passion, you really want to get there fast. You want to do great work that same day that you learn about a new subject. But when students put a lot of pressure on themselves to learn a new subject and and they want to have great results, many times they're at odds with each other. The idea of learning a new skill shouldn't have the pressure of producing something great with that skill. So I think it takes a level of maturity and patience for a student to realize, oh, I'm going to try and learn a new skill. I should give myself time to master the skill before I have expectations of greatness using that skill. And so I think that some patience. And then lastly, because the skills are hard to learn and they take a long time, so you need patience, you have to have self-motivation, so confidence. Confidence is probably the last bit of the equation. Not overconfidence to where you're not open to ideas. Being open to ideas, it's weird, the questioning can lead to people being stubborn, so you don't want to be stubborn, you want to have an open mind. And to have an open mind, you want to trust your instructor when they've asked you to learn a new skill that you think is maybe not important. There's a certain level of trust of that senior, designer or teacher, and you enter the exercises with an open mind, and you try to give it your best effort, and then you have to trust that learning those skills will eventually reward you. I don't know that I believe in talent so much. I think that talent is a function of practice. So I think that, going back to the idea of passion, if you have passion, you can acquire the skills. The skills are almost all physics-based. They're all about linear perspective, building models, drawing, rendering, material indication. So all the visual communication tools, we can teach that. So I think that comes through rigorous training and practice. Creativity is a little harder to teach. because it requires a shift in someone's mindset. And if they're 20 years old and in university, that mindset can be well established. You know, those pathways in the brain of thinking a certain way have been, you know, it's become habit. So to enter into a class on creativity and ask a student to think about a problem from a different perspective can be quite challenging. And I think that's a harder skill set. I still think it's a skill. I think creativity is a skill you can learn, but not without curiosity and passion. But I think if somebody has the curiosity, passion, and drive, they can learn all the visual communication skills, and they can learn to think creatively. Yeah, I've seen quite a bit of artwork of Taiwanese students. I think there's some quite good, but it's not the norm to see. I don't see as much good work. I see some great work, but there are fewer people that do the great work. I think, like when you look at any class or any group of people, the quality of the work or the profession is measured by the middle, you know, the biggest bulk of the work. And when I look at that in Taiwan, it seems like the students are very good technicians. Like the rendering quality, the craft of handling a pencil or a marker or working in Photoshop, you know, the 3D modeling, it's just, everybody's very meticulous, detail-oriented, but I see that there's maybe not the level of design. And I don't want to say creativity, because it's still very creative to render to a certain level and exercise those skills, but it does strike me that I see lots and lots of illustrations that are very proficiently rendered. But then when I look for originality of that within the subject, I can't find a lot of that. So I would say fantastic technical skills, but maybe not enough daring creativity has been practiced to the same level as the rendering skills. And if you can practice them at the same level, they both move together. I force myself to be innovative by doing a couple of things. One, I always try to reinvent the way I'm doing my projects. So I'm forever tinkering, let's say, with my own tools, my own techniques. So I like to think that the same sort of reframing of a problem to solve a product design issue, for instance, even about ergonomics, the way I explore different solutions and even prototype things to test them like an engineer. I'd like to take that thought process and apply it to my own creative process. So if there are new tools that I could use, could I take a photograph for this? Could I draw that? Should I work in Photoshop? Should I work in Modo? Should I work in ZBrush? Should I work in Sketchbook Pro? So by learning lots of different tools, I can mix and match the tools for very different results. And so I really love that tinkering with my tools, right, to make it, to help me to come up with different ideas. Then the other side is about having ideas that I want to play with in the first place. And I get a lot of ideas from travel. So it's, for me, the most enriching thing about being in Taiwan is actually getting to travel to a parallel universe, right? Where I come here and everything's basically the same, right? People still have jobs, they go to work, they've got families, kids go to school. So it's basically, you understand. But at the next level down, right, everything's slightly different, right? The topography, the language, the social norms, the eating habits, the food, right? We still derive the same nutrition, whether we're in the Asia or the West, but the flavors are all different, right? The way that the food's prepared is different. And so if your job as a designer is to imagine other worlds, especially for entertainment designers, traveling to another world is a great way to exercise that experience or learn about the experience. And travel does that for me. When I travel to foreign countries, it's like I just visited, you know, a different world. And then I can draw upon that when asked to create a product that nobody's ever seen before. It's familiar, but slightly different. I can think back. Oh, I remember I was in Taiwan, and that restaurant was familiar. I knew it was a restaurant, but everything was slightly different. And I went to the restroom, and everything was there, generally the same, but all slightly different. I can draw upon that experience, and I find that quite helpful.
Okay, thank you. That's the end of our interview.
You're very welcome. Thank you for having me here.
Thank you.
谢谢。